The story begins with Pippa and Thomas, a young couple excitedly moving into their dream apartment in Montreal, a bright, modern space with stunning city views. Pippa, an ophthalmic assistant, and Thomas, a musician, have been looking forward to this fresh start. They agree to take things slow, even deciding to hold off on having kids for at least 4 years, savoring this new chapter together. Their first night is filled with laughter and hopeful toasts for the future, but the excitement takes a curious turn when they notice that their large windows look directly into the apartment across the street. There, they spot an attractive couple wrapped in a passionate embrace, seemingly unaware or maybe indifferent to being seen. Thomas is amused, joking that perhaps the neighbors want an audience, while Pippa, both intrigued and a bit uncomfortable, suggests they turn away. Later, hoping for a memorable first night together, Pippa slips into something daring, a steamy outfit chosen to spark a romantic moment, but finds Thomas already fast asleep, leaving her disappointed. The next morning, she eagerly recounts the scene from the night before to her friend Ari, who laughs it off, suggesting there's no harm in a little people-watching if the neighbors don't seem to mind. Pippa isn't so sure but feels her curiosity start to build. Later that day, Pippa receives a housewarming gift from her boss, a Japanese birdhouse, which she's excited to take home. That evening, Thomas surprises her with a sweet sketch of the two of them, and Pippa hangs the birdhouse near the sketch in their new place. But soon their attention drifts back to the neighbors, whom they've nicknamed Brent and Margot. When they see Brent coughing hard, as if something's stuck in his throat, while Margot dances nearby with her headphones on, they panic, trying to get her attention. Before they can act, Margot finally notices and rushes to his side, leaving Pippa and Thomas both relieved and feeling oddly connected to these strangers. Later that night, while Thomas sleeps, Pippa returns to the window. She watches Margot leave the apartment with a suitcase, while Brent, half-dressed, stands by the window watching her go. Pippa's curiosity deepens, edging toward obsession as her gaze lingers on Brent, until suddenly their eyes lock. Startled, she loses her grip on her glass, which slips from her hand and shatters, jolting her back to reality. The next night, as Pippa heads home, a pair of binoculars in a shop window catches her eye. On impulse, she buys them, excited by the idea of getting a better view into their neighbors' lives. That evening, she and Thomas settle in, curious to watch from a closer vantage point. Through the binoculars, Pippa and Thomas watch as Brent invites a new woman over for a photo shoot, but it quickly becomes clear this is more than just a shoot. Things heat up fast, and Brent's flirting turns passionate. Pippa and Thomas share a look, their curiosity shifting into something deeper. As they keep watching, Pippa feels herself drawn in, almost like she's part of the scene. Unable to control her fascination with Brent, she asks Thomas to mirror what they're watching, her gaze still fixed on him. Her own desire grows, feeding off the thrill of this hidden connection. But Thomas finishes quickly and leaves for the bathroom, breaking the moment and leaving Pippa wanting more. She looks back through the binoculars and sees Brent still enjoying himself with the model, leaving a hint of disappointment on her face. Later that night, unable to sleep, Pippa grabs the binoculars again and catches Brent's wife coming home, playfully flirting with him, unaware of what happened earlier. The next day, over lunch with Thomas's sister Joni and their friend Ari, Pippa brings up what they've discovered. The conversation quickly turns lively as Joni shares a funny college memory. She and Thomas once rigged a laser pointer with a microphone to eavesdrop on a crush's conversation. Pippa, immediately intrigued, presses Thomas to show her how it works. By the time they return home, Thomas is explaining the setup, how they'd need a mirror positioned on the other side to bounce sound back to their microphone, but he hesitates, pointing out that this is illegal and feels wrong. Pippa, however, urges him on, convincing him to give it a try. Later, they notice the neighbors setting up for a Halloween party, and Pippa seizes the opportunity. Waiting for the day, dressed to blend in with the crowd, she and Thomas sneak into the party, ready to put their plan into action and set up the mirror. Brent spots Pippa in the crowd and playfully lifts her for a photo, leaving Thomas uneasy. Curious and a bit tense, Thomas follows as Brent leads Pippa to a photo spot, positioning and guiding them both for the best shot. After the shoot, Brent disappears into the crowd, giving Thomas and Pippa the chance to set up the reflector. With everything in place, they quietly slip out of the party. Back at their apartment, Thomas points a laser at the reflector, adjusting it until the sound from Brent and Margot's apartment streams into their headphones, signaling they've successfully completed their mission. The first conversation they hear is tense. Margot accuses Brent of cheating, and he tries to deflect. As the argument heats up, Margot tries to flirt to calm things down, but Brent, still angry, pushes her, breaking her glasses. Pippa and Thomas listen, shocked and oddly moved by what they're hearing. The next day at work, Pippa is surprised to see a familiar face. Margot, whose real name she learns is Julia, has come into her clinic for new glasses. During the eye exam, Pippa's calm approach and friendly conversation help Julia feel at ease, almost like she's talking to a friend rather than a stranger. By the end of the appointment, they built an unexpected connection, and Julia invites Pippa to join her for a spa day that weekend. Pippa eagerly agrees, looking forward to it. Later that day, when Pippa gets home, she can't wait to tell Thomas about what happened. At first, he's intrigued and eager to hear more, but when she mentions Julia's invitation, his excitement fades. He urges her to keep her distance from the neighbors. Pippa feels conflicted, insisting she has a moral responsibility to Julia. Frustrated, Thomas asks if he's not enough for her, but Pippa stands firm. As the argument heats up, Thomas walks out, leaving her alone with her thoughts and her growing obsession with the lives across the street. The weekend arrives and Pippa meets Julia for a spa day. They relax in the warm, calming atmosphere as Julia begins to open up about her life, her voice carrying a mix of pride and sadness. She shares that she once had a promising career as a model, but didn't finish school, and now she feels lost and uncertain. Her husband, Sebastian, whom she fondly calls Seb, is her whole world, and Pippa realizes this is Brent's real name. She describes him as successful and driven, a true professional she trusts completely, even as she hints at hidden struggles in their marriage. Pippa listens intently, sensing Julia's vulnerability, and offers comforting words. They bond, though Pippa's curiosity about Sebastian and his secretive double life grows stronger. That night, Pippa's mind won't settle. The moment she's sure Thomas is asleep, she quietly sets up the listening devices and notices Julia is still awake. Deciding to take things further, she connects to their printer from Thomas's computer. After a quick test message, she sends over an anonymous note, spilling the truth about Sebastian's cheating. Julia notices the printer and checks the note, but doesn't react. Seeing this, Pippa sends another message suggesting she check the bathroom trash, knowing Sebastian had thrown a used condom there the day before. Soon after, Julia discovers a used condom and is devastated. Just then, Thomas catches Pippa in the act and is furious, warning her that she's gone too far. The tension between Pippa and Thomas grows as they watch Julia pick up a knife in the kitchen. Pippa freezes, horrified, as Julia walks towards Sebastian with clear intent. Thomas panicked and urges her to call the police, but Pippa hesitates, fearing they'll get in trouble for spying. As they argue, Julia ultimately stops short, dropping the knife in anguish. Thomas storms off to bed, furious, and smashes Pippa's binoculars in frustration. The next morning, Thomas confronts Pippa, disappointed and feeling like he's no longer enough for her. Pippa, realizing the danger of her obsession, promises him she'll stop spying and leave Julia alone. They share a tentative embrace, but the calm is short-lived. Pippa sees through the window that Julia has taken her own life. Thomas is horrified, blaming Pippa for everything, and feeling he can't stay, he packs his things and leaves, ending their relationship. Left alone, Pippa is overwhelmed with guilt and spends her nights haunted by the events that unfolded. In the days that follow, Pippa's obsession with Sebastian deepens. She watches him grieve, isolated and struggling. Drawn to him in ways she can't explain, she feels compelled to comfort him. One evening, she sees him leave for a nearby bar and decides to follow. She sneaks in and takes a seat at a table across the room where she can watch him, keeping her distance as she quietly observes, until Sebastian eventually notices her. He walks over and gently sits across from her, mentioning that she looks familiar. As they begin to talk, Sebastian introduces himself as a photographer, sharing a bit about his work with an easy confidence that instantly draws Pippa in. His questions soon grow more personal, weaving in details that play into Pippa's unspoken fantasies and deep desires. He asks if she's ever felt drawn into someone else's life or felt close to someone she barely knew. His words make her nervous, but pull her in, stirring emotions she thought she could keep hidden. Eventually, Sebastian suggests they head back to his place for drinks and take some photos, unable to resist the pull of her obsession. Pippa agrees, fully aware that photography isn't what they'll be focusing on. In the elevator, they exchange looks, the tension building between them. When they arrive, Pippa, eager and impatient, closes the door herself, feeling excitement build inside. Just as he has with models before, Sebastian begins photographing Pippa, his usual technique slowly coaxing her into revealing more. He starts with a few casual shots, guiding her into poses that feel familiar from what she's seen before. Then, in his calm, persuasive way, he suggests she strip down for better shots. Sebastian removes his shirt first, encouraging her with a steady gaze, and Pippa, caught up in the thrill and allure, follows his lead. Before long, the line between posing and passion blurs, and they give in to the moment, spending the night together. Meanwhile, Thomas arrives home holding a bouquet, ready to make amends. Not finding Pippa inside, he pours himself a glass of his usual chlorophyll juice, but something feels off, so he pours the rest into the bird feeder outside. Just then, he notices movement in Sebastian's apartment across the street. Curious, he grabs the binoculars and, to his horror, sees Pippa and Sebastian together. Betrayed and devastated, he collapses into silence. The next morning, Pippa returns home to find the door slightly ajar. A sense of dread creeps in as she enters, only to find a bouquet on the floor and, moments later, Thomas's lifeless body hanging before her. Shocked and overcome with grief, she realizes the depth of her choices and spends the days that follow in a daze, consumed by guilt and loss. Sometime later, Pippa notices a poster in the street advertising Sebastian's upcoming exhibition. Seeking closure, she meets up with her friend Ari to talk. She pours out the entire story, from her obsession with the neighbors to her night with Sebastian and the tragedy of Thomas's death. Ari tries to comfort her, assuring her that she isn't solely to blame and encouraging her to move forward. Hesitantly, Pippa asks if seeing Sebastian again might help her gain closure, and Ari supports the idea, suggesting they attend the exhibition together. At the exhibition, the crowd is thick, and the room buzzes with excitement. Spotting Pippa, Sebastian greets her with detached friendliness, thanking her for coming. But when the event begins, Pippa is stunned to see Julia, alive and well, joining Sebastian on stage. Julia addresses the audience, introducing the exhibit as a modern fable, telling the tragic tale of a young woman named Pippa. With dawning horror, Pippa realizes the entire exhibit is about her and Thomas. One by one, the images are unveiled, revealing every moment from their move-in day to their surveillance of Sebastian and Julia, even to Thomas's tragic end. Sebastian and Julia explain that Pippa and Thomas had been unwitting pawns in their project. The two of them had recorded every moment of Pippa and Thomas's life in the apartment. They revealed that they had manipulated every step, capturing it all under the guise of an art project. Devastated and betrayed, Pippa stumbles out of the exhibit. Fueled by rage, she heads to Sebastian and Julia's apartment, where she notices a door leading to an attic room. Inside, she discovers a hidden studio with cameras, monitors, and photographs documenting every intimate detail of her life with Thomas. Overcome with anguish, Pippa tears down the equipment and destroys the images, releasing all her pain and frustration into the wreckage around her. The next day, Pippa decides she can't stay in the apartment any longer. As she packs, she pours the last chlorophyll juice into the bird feeder outside. Glancing down, she notices several dead birds beneath the window and suddenly realizes there was more to Thomas's death than she thought. Meanwhile, Sebastian and Julia give an interview about their exhibit, defending their project. When the reporter questions the ethics of spying on their tenants, they explain that Pippa and Thomas had unknowingly signed a lease allowing them to be watched. Julia is smug, claiming they aren't responsible for people who sign without reading. Sebastian, however, seems visibly uneasy, and they quickly leave the interview. When they arrive home, they find a bottle of wine on their doorstep and take it inside. Noticing a note that reads, "From the Tates," they assume it's another gift, shrug, and start drinking. Just then, their printer suddenly starts printing. A message appears, "I know." They exchange uneasy glances as the second message prints, "Thomas didn't kill himself." Panic begins to set in. Looking out the window, Sebastian spots Pippa watching them from the rooftop across the street. She turns and runs, leading them to chase her into the office building where she works. In the lab, they finally corner her, and Pippa confronts them, revealing that she knows everything, that Julia poisoned Thomas and then hung him to make it look like suicide. Julia laughs, dismissing Pippa's claims as paranoid fantasies, but suddenly her words falter, and she begins to feel faint. Pippa reveals that the wine was from her, and it was laced with a sedative. As Julia collapses, Pippa faces Sebastian, her voice calm and resolute. She tells him to look at her, promising he'll remember this as the last thing he ever sees. She drags them both to the ophthalmic equipment and uses a powerful laser to burn their retinas, leaving them blinded. In the days that follow, a new couple moves into Pippa and Thomas's old apartment. As they settle in, one of them notices they can see straight into Sebastian and Julia's apartment across the street, where the pair, now blind, true to Pippa's promise. She was the last thing they ever saw, leaving them forever haunted by the consequences of their twisted art. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for more videos like this. There are amazing stories coming your way. Take care, and see you next time.